Well, happy Friday, everybody. We are the Jocks of All Trades podcast, plus many guests this week. This is our movie review episode, Smashed Popcorn. It is time to finally go through the Lord of the Rings films. We had our poll. The votes came in. This beat Lord of the Rings, it beat Star Wars by one vote. So there was a lot of fighting back and forth. For those that are going to cry and say, I wanted Star Wars, that's fine. We're going to do Star Wars second. But we are going to traverse through Tolkien's treasured tales of terror, tree beards, taters, and hairy toes.
That's good.
It took me a while. I had to come up with that. But thank you all for being here. We're going to do introductions, but as usual, we are reviewing the Fellowship of the Ring. All right, that did nothing. Cool. Our video did not work.
It worked on my end.
Really? It kind of glitched out for me. That's fine. Okay, we are here. Let's introduce people. Luke, welcome back from school. Luke has not been with us for a while, but promised he would be here for Lord of the Rings. Probably one of the biggest Lord of the Rings nerds that I know. He would watch it from now until he's probably 85. Jesse, thanks for joining us. I knew you would enjoy this, and I'm happy to have you here to talk with us. Dad is also joining us again. I think we haven't had him around since the Spider-Man movies. That's good. Thanks for making us watch the extended editions when I was younger so that I would appreciate these films. Let's start with probably the best aspect of this trilogy, the casting. Holy cow. There are a lot of good actors and actresses in this film. I'll just list the big ones that I wrote. There's more, but Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Orlando Bloom, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Bean, John Rhys-Davies, Sean Astin, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, Christopher Lee, Andy Serkis, Hugo Weaving, Liv Tyler, and Kate Blanchett. That already is a home run. I'm already interested as soon as I can recognize that there are good talents to put a story that's a little older, of course, but one of the best fantasy novels that's ever been written. Good job to Peter Jackson and to the studio to be very selective about who they wanted to be a part. Now, we will talk about trivia later. Not everyone that was on board with this trilogy was supposed to be. I'm sure we all know that. If not, we're going to share it with other people. Was there anybody that kind of shocked you that was in this? Like, I tried to view this as like my first time watching it and just appreciate everything that was there. What are some of everybody's first thoughts?
My first thought when watching the movie and trying to put a first-time lens on it, as someone who's a huge fan of the books, I bring that bias into it when I watch the movies, and so therefore I'm always comparing the two. And one of the main differences is how young Frodo is compared to his age in the books. So that definitely gives a different iteration of Frodo than what someone is used to imagining and putting on, the screen of their imagination when they read the books. But it doesn't decrease the movie's quality in and of the movie itself.
Anyone else?
I think if I were to ever watch it, for the first time and having to watch all the other movies that I've seen before, and I don't know, watched it last week or something, I feel like I would be surprised that Orlando Bloom's in it as like an elf. I feel like his role throughout movies, like he's been one of those actors that has been able to change really for whatever the role was needed for. Like some people just kind of have their specific role, like Adam Sandler, right? He's just pretty much the same person in every movie. But like Orlando Bloom is just like one of those guys. Like he fits into just about everything that he needs to fit into. And seeing that he would be in this movie, I guess just kind of shocked me. But I think one of the best ones is Billy Boyd that plays Pippin.
Yes.
He's excellent. I mean, he's so funny. Just a goofy hobbit, like awesome. He's definitely one of my favorite characters.
You need someone of intelligence on this sort of mission, quest, thing. Just his timing and comedic timing. I went through and I was like, Merry and Pippin are perfect little background to everything, because it's very serious. It's very exposition based, and it's great to have the little back and forth with them and being just fun. I agree. I like the two of them. They really bring some well-roundedness to this film, because it has every right to just be dark, but it's nice that they have more comedy and more little humor. I think I broke something. Pulls out a carrot, like just small little funny things here and there. So I have to ask, this is one of those few times where we could probably just spend the entire podcast talking about it, but what was your favorite thing? Maybe they work in tandem in terms of cinematography, costuming, set pieces. What really brings you into this world? What got you the most?
Well, starting off, the music.
Exactly.
Just as soon as you hit play, that music comes in, you're just like, oh my gosh, like it takes you back. Like you can just kind of imagine anything. It's that music that, like, if we were wargaming or playing Star Wars miniatures or something, like I could have that on in the background and just like I'm ready to go. Like I'm ready to fight, something like that. It's just the music is its own character in this movie, especially when we go to the Shire, like that. Like it just brings out so many feels for me as well. It's so good. It's just a character in itself. But like you said, the set pieces, the location that they did all of this on, it all works together so well. And then just there's CGI in this movie for sure, but the natural physical, like costumes and everything, that just, it all looks so good. And I really have not seen many movies that take that much time to do it that well. Like for me, it's so rare. They just really want to dive deep into the CGI, the special effects, and rely on that. And this movie, basically, because it came out, in a time where CGI wasn't like as good as it is now, had to rely on those physical set pieces, those props, all of that. And whoever did that did a wonderful job, because it all looks so good. So that really impressed me in this movie.
I have something to just to bring out, and not to reiterate too much about the book. Can y'all hear me just fine? Good.
Yeah.
Is that they began with a prologue. This is not how the series began. You were thrown into the middle of the story, but I appreciate the fact that they gave a prologue, and that this sweeping, stringed, mysterious sort of music drew you into the story, and they gave you that in synopsis. You don't always get that in a story. Often, at least the movies I enjoy, they throw you into the middle of the action, and you have to figure things out as you go along. But because this story is so expansive, I'm glad that they actually had a prologue. I mean, again, this is the comparison of the book to the movie, but I'm so thankful they had the prologue. It just kind of set the stage, and I felt like, I can invite, for example, I think, I don't know if you'd read it by that time when we saw it, or Alana. I don't think my wife had read it either. I had, but it just kind of eased it in. But I love the fact that it condensed some of the characters. So when you saw them enter on the screen, when the Nazgul entered in the screen, you knew who they were. You had an idea. So it set the story really well. Peter Jackson, and he had to develop that, because that wasn't, again, part of the original story, but he condensed and even wrote some things. And there's some beautiful lines about history and then legend and then myth, and there's just beautiful lines in the opening prologue, which I thought just drew me immediately in. The sweeping music, the visuals, and Peter Jackson's use of light is astounding. In the beginning, that the shadows that play when the faces just come in, it is so evocative. It makes you look for the small instances of light everywhere, so it immediately draws you in. Just from the prologue on, you're already invested more into the story, as if as opposed to like reading the book. So
no, and I completely agree with that, and I will kind of play off of that. Looking at the prologue, it's because I think the prologue definitely is important, because you're starting with Fellowship of the Ring, when readers of the Lord of the Rings, they had their own prologue. It was called The Hobbit. And so they kind of already kind of knew what some of the background kind of was. Maybe they didn't know who the Nazgul were, but they certainly knew, okay, this is where the ring came from. This is who Gollum was. This is who this Bilbo Baggins dude is. So they kind of had that kind of knowledge too. And then going off of just more the movie, the prologue, number one, Cate Blanchett does an amazing job as Galadriel, but that voice she can evoke as the narrator in that prologue, it gives me goosebumps each time I watch it, because
every time.
I mean, because when you think of narrator voices, you think of, those, cheesy, in a world where, and so you get something like that.
The Batman voice. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Or you think of, that deep, gruff voice like James Earl Jones or Morgan Freeman, those kinds of voices as narrators. But Cate Blanchett brings something yet feminine yet cold to it. That's just so, that gives you goosebumps each time. And it's like, I'm going, that's one of the best monologue. The prologue there is probably one of the best monologues, I think, in modern cinema.
I concur.
I would say that.
Go
Go ahead, Ron.
Nope, I was going to say, I saw you try to say something earlier. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie, over the rest of them, and in the series, but also, I mean, just being, in my opinion, one of the best movies out there. That it sets this excitement up in a movie that there isn't a lot of battle scenes. There's not a lot of blood and gore. There's not a lot of, I mean, in this day and age, I mean, there's no sex scenes. There's really nothing that attracts people to watching a movie today in it. I mean, it's a group of people, not even people. I mean, a group of different races getting together and finding one common goal, and then doing anything and everything they possibly can to achieve that goal. And even if that means that, some die or some get left behind or they get separated or whatever happens in the future in these paths, that they're still going to end up trying to get to that same goal. And they're willing to, lay all, their lives on the line for the betterment of the entire, of all Middle Earth. And it's like, this movie does have the entire Fellowship in it, which, just doesn't happen in the future. So that's why, like, out of the three, this one is my favorite, and I feel like the other ones are more or less like, a little bit of awesomeness, but then you do have like these 2-hour battle scenes, and it's like you have the Fellowship. It's an amazing movie, and there's like not that many battle scenes. I mean, very, very minimal. So and it kind of gives you that little taste of like, this is where the dwarves were, and this is how they lived. This is where the elves were and how they lived. And it gave the hobbits, and it gave you that touch of all the different races that you're going to see. And it introduced everything so well that, like, by the time you're just done watching the Fellowship, you're like, I feel like I'm kind of an expert on, hobbits, humans, and it's like, and then you find out more in the rest of the movies, and it's like, I'm really about it. There's so much more to learn.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you cut out for a minute. Keep going.
Oh no, I think it was playing back or something.
Oh, that was weird. Yeah, because I didn't see your mouth moving, but I heard you, and I'm like, uh,
Everything so
this is weird. Maybe it's me. I'm gonna turn my volume down a little bit so it doesn't feed back in. So I think one of the things that I really enjoy, and Lord of the Rings is really evocative of this. We're all learned to some degree. I thought that was a good time to use learned. So we're all familiar with the hero's journey, and this is a fantastic movie for that. And it's to me, it plays with what Star Wars plays with. It's not a let's play with the gray the whole time like Qui-Gon. Like the original trilogy plays with Lord of the Rings that there is a very definitive light and dark. And they did so well. I mean, just the shots of Rivendell, this place of peace, this place of solitude, the place where everyone can come together and be, versus the shots of Mordor at the beginning, Moria, which has been in this destruction state for so long. Then you'll go to oh shoot, Jesse, help me out here. The forest right after
Isengard?
Moria. Lorien, thank you. Even then, like right on the footsteps of evil, it's still a safe place, but you still get that like they're not out of the woods yet. It's not over. Like the lighting, and I'm so glad you brought it up. Versus
I think that's you echoing back, Brad.
it is. I don't know why. But
It's better the second time around. It's okay. Like leftovers.
I love these types of movies, these films, these trilogies that really give us the character that we just want to see succeed. And
as you hold up your hand with a ring on it, thank you for that. This is
I know. Thanks.
very powerful. I appreciate that.
It's not Frodo. Like at the beginning, like I'm sorry, but I don't care about Frodo. Aragorn comes on, you're like the king, his rightful place. Like you want to root for him, and then you're supposed to root for the most common of people, and that's the hero, that's the champion, and the holder of the ring bearer. Like it's just so it puts everything on its head. Because with Star Wars, we look at Luke and we know, okay, a farm boy, but he's got some mystical powers. Frodo's got nothing except for some chainmail and a sword that glows. Like that's all he's got. So I don't know if that resonates with anybody. Really good friendships and just doing what you can to make your difference in the world, and that just speaks volumes to me.
There's one comparison you made, which I think is interesting. Luke was looking for adventure. Frodo wanted to avoid it at all costs. He is the reluctant hero. He didn't want to accept the responsibility. He tried to give it, the ring back, and you take it. I don't want anything to do with this. But the reluctant hero again draws us into the story, and Elijah Wood portrays it so well.
Yes,
because Star Wars, we look at Luke, but he's got
have a nice little echo there.
So yeah, we are getting an echo. I will go on and say that we look at the value of the reluctant hero, or the hero that is pretty, what we would say, ordinary, or doesn't have a lot to bring to the table, and we relate to it because there have been times in our own lives where we feel that way. We feel as if this such and such a person has strength, this such and such a person has skill, this such and such a person has power and influence, the ability to change people's minds and that kind of thing. Me, I'm just little old me, and sometimes I only feel like I'm half the size of everybody else in the room, whether that be figuratively or literally. But I do think that because we've all felt that way, we can look at the example of characters like Frodo, characters like Sam, who, in spite of all of the odds being against them, they make the hard yet simple choice to just do the right thing, to get back up again, whether it be for the third, fourth, or fifth time, and keep going. And that's, I think that example of perseverance and persistence is something that resonates deeply with all of us.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that's just another aside. This may be part of what you're getting to. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the cinematography, the way Peter Jackson captured the hobbits and the physical tricks he used via distance and using those actors who are shorter, in the live scenes, I didn't come across this going, oh, there they are, or oh, this is a change, or I couldn't quite figure it out when I saw it. I was just drawn in, and these little miniature people, hobbits, were what they said they were. I mean, I love that. I mean, perspectives filming, like Ian McKellen, inside a Bilbo's house and having it a different scale when he filmed that, and just having it, just seamless. I love the fact that I didn't have to try to figure it out. If it's one of the great things about cinematography and or even technology is you don't put those on the forefront. They become such an integral part of the story that you don't even notice them. I think that's what was so brilliant about Peter Jackson's choice of angle and shot and light, but also those that I think it was Weta, right, who did most of the special effects. It was it was astounding, and it was a brave choice by Peter Jackson too to go not with like was it Skywalker? No, it's not Skywalker. What is it? Oh, where's the other company that does all the special effects? Lucas started anyway.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know.
But it was a brave decision, but I thought it was brilliant too. It got it out of the normalized special effects that were in Hollywood at the time. So that was another great thing about the movie.
I think so there's a theater term. I'm going to be very brief with how I explain this. Suspension of disbelief is kind of what you were talking about just being able to jump into something without going, well, there's obviously not human being adults that are 3 feet tall. And I didn't feel like I had to keep questioning that. The way that this film is put together in the whole trilogy, really, they're so excellent at bringing you into that world that you never question, well, there's no elves, orcs don't exist. You know what I mean? Like you're just drawn in immediately with all of the cinematography, with the costuming. Jesse, I was going to ask you this. How much do you love the costuming? I just, for me, it just sells the whole thing, especially the difference between Aragorn, like this raggedy king, and then this prince and Legolas and this wonderful garb and everything's brand new, and then the dwarves with their metal everything, and like it's just so evocative. I need a better word than evocative, but
yeah, I mean it is awesome because I mean, not only did he put like what an elf should wear, what a dwarf should wear, or a hobbit should wear. It's almost like it almost goes with like what their job titles are, right? So like when you see Bilbo and you see Frodo and you see the all the different hobbits, like you tend to see farmers, right? Because they have that's really what they are, right? And then all of a sudden, then you skip to like you finally see some dwarves, and it's like you were saying, like you see a lot of the metalworking, and you see the helmets that are sculpted differently, and they're you start to see later in some of the other movies that what a that a hobbit might have a pony, but an elf or a man might have a horse, but then you get like to the rams and things like that with the dwarves. So it's like the costuming is like almost everything. I mean, when you look at Orlando Bloom, nobody guesses, or Galadriel, nobody guesses like, is that an elf? I mean, you don't even have to have the pointy ears. I mean, like, it's like you just know that's an elf. You can kind of see the difference between like some of the higher elves and some of the lower elves. I mean, you can see and just the way that the like men, where you have like Rohan is a little more brown, the tans.
Yes.
Where Gondor, you're going to see the silvers and the greens, and I mean, it's just like the colors and everything within every single one of the main characters' costumes, to even the guys all the way in the back that you really have to pause and maybe rewind to go see that second glimpse of that one guy. work in his garden or whatever, and you're like, wow, like that's amazing. So yeah, I mean, the costumes I think are amazing. You know, I think he did a fantastic job.
The level of depth, I think, is what you're referring to as well, and just the detailing is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars, it reminds me of that too, but you also have the stormtrooper that whacks their head off of the door. There's like itty bitty things that are just like goofy and campy, but I don't get that with Lord of the Rings. It's so crisp and refined and just beautifully well made for you to just move through the movie with ease. There's one last thing, and then we're going to talk about what we did and didn't like in this film, and maybe some key elements of the film. You can mention multiple things. You don't have to be stuck to one thing that you liked. The language in this is brilliant. I love that they took Tolkien's original writings, his crafted language, and they used it. And that was just so incredible to me to see Elvish, to see Aragorn and Legolas exchange words, and Arwen Elrond. It's so interesting to hear Dwarvish, and you know, it doesn't feel, again, suspension of disbelief. It doesn't feel falsified. It doesn't feel just for the sake of this film, with how fluent they were, with how the intellects and not the intellects, the dialects are different too. If you notice how Legolas and Arwen and Elrond talk versus how Aragorn talks. Aragorn still talks Elvish, but it's different. Like, it was just the level of, and I'm going to keep bringing that up because it's what makes these films so great, is the detailing and the level of detailing. And you were right, films now don't do that, and they didn't have to rely on flashy scenes and stuff like that. I think the Hobbit movies got closer to that than the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. But they just relied on good storytelling in so many aspects. I just think all of these things together, you're in from what Dad and Luke were saying. You're in immediately from the prologue. Like, there's never any time that you have to get into the film. I'm crying because my wife is not a Lord of the Rings fan, so I will continue to watch this by myself. She just said, I don't see why you'd need to watch it more than once. Like, because it's the same reason I watch Star Wars more than once. You get something every time.
I married that too. It's fine. She reads it. She's done. It's going back into that world helps me explore. And it's that spirit of the unknown. When you read a story that you've read before, I feel like I'm just visiting a friend that I've known for a while, and we're just having a conversation. You know, we just pick up right where we left off. Yeah. That's what it feels like. It's that. And one other thing, I love the fact that the pacing, especially the extended version. I like the extended version better because it's more like the pacing of the book. The book puts you right into it. And I don't want to make too many comparisons, but let's just say that he's taking you on a long journey. It's not just here's the way to point A to point B, and we're going to connect them as fast as we can. But in the journey, I think this is part of Tolkien's life too. There are a lot of twists and turns and people that'll help you along the way and people that might hurt you along the way. I know it very much. He wrote it from a lot of his personal experience after having gone through seeing world wars. Basically, it was just devastating, you know. So he said it's not necessarily, at least what I read, it was not necessarily exactly what was around him happening, but knowing what he went through, it was a journey. It was a beautiful journey, and I feel like revisiting it, I was watching it earlier today. I just feel like I'm just an old friend. I'm just sitting down and just having a great time, just revisiting.
I'll make one more comment, and then we'll move on to what we liked, and then we'll have to do what we didn't like because we do it with every film. So we'll find something, I'm sure. But the last thing with that too, mentioning Tolkien, I feel like they did him a great service to this as well. I like wordier writers. Tolkien, I would put along that line of rather wordy. H.P. Lovecraft, I think, is probably the wordiest writer I've ever received, who can go about 3 or 4 pages just describing the weather outside. But Tolkien has that. But the way that they made it appropriate for the film is that, you're right, they kept the pacing well without rushing. They let you see Rivendell. They let you see some of these background characters. They let you see these rooms and these places, and it doesn't feel like it's limited to very small and then, oh, let's jump here, let's go to Moria. No, we got to see the Misty Mountains. We got to see one of my favorite shots in this film is where they're passing that rock and we see the full fellowship walking past the rock, each individual member. They just did so well to stretch out what I would imagine how Tolkien would have written it out. Of they pass the rock one by one, each contemplating the journey. You can hear it almost in your head of how he would have written it out in some of these snippets. And I think one of the best ways to rate and grade a film is to have those moments. And this, The Two Towers and Return of the King, I can remember the film. Did I have to watch it last night until 2 a.m.? No, I didn't. But I did anyways. But you get the snippets and you know the story. You can picture it. They're just so visually stunning and captivating. And I had to piggyback on that with Tolkien and his writing, and it just really is. It flows well. It really does. I've done a lot of talking. Kyle, you've been quiet for a little bit. Do you want to start us out with what you liked in this film? Oh, hang on.
No. We have technical difficulties again.
Yeah, I can if my Wi-Fi wants to agree with me. Can you all hear me?
We can now.
No?
Yep.
No. Nice.
Oh no. We've lost our Sackville Baggins.
We have.
Succumb to the schemes of Mordor.
Yes, he has.
That's sad.
He's been taken by the Nazgul.
Luke, what did you like in this film? I'm gonna see if I can get Kyle back on.
Sure, not a problem. Me, it's like you kind of referenced it a little bit, Brad, but me, I am always in awe of not only the world building and how quickly Peter Jackson could build the world for you, but how all of the details work in harmony with each other, and it all just fits exactly how it's supposed to. It's like each shot, and it's like whoever suggested they film it in New Zealand deserves to be a billionaire, because it is so beautiful and it evokes completely and utterly what Tolkien, I believe, would have wanted. It is each shot works beautifully, whether you are passing that rock, whether it's a shot of children playing in the Shire, whether it's them passing through the mountain pass before Saruman stops them, or whether it's traversing the mines of Moria. Each shot just encapsulates the awe-inducing nature of where they are and what is happening. And you also mentioned the language, Brad. Just Tolkien, I wouldn't describe his writing as wordy. I would describe it as very, very formal and just very, very serious, taking in reverence for the story that he's telling. And just how each character is not, even like characters like Pippin and Merry aren't treated as throw-off characters and aren't treated with, a level of respect. Each one fits this story perfectly, and you can see the seriousness in each one of them. And I feel like in modern cinema and in modern storytelling, that doesn't happen a lot. It's like me and my family, we just recently watched through all the Harry Potter movies, and that kind of seriousness of tone doesn't happen all the time. It's like I look at characters like Ron Weasley, Hermione Granger, even Harry Potter himself. Sometimes, there are moments where you're like, okay, this character does something that's kind of out of line, or he talks in a way that's just, you know, you can tell that it's a more modern story. This, it's just the seriousness of everything. It's can be a balm for a lot of people, and then so just the seriousness that's given the story, I really appreciate.
Yeah. Dad, you're next.
We mentioned it earlier. It has to be music. One of my favorite parts of this. I mean, the very hummable concerning hobbits, the playful woodwinds, and you feel the emotion, and I think that's part of. And I'll go back to it again. You feel like you're recapturing some of your childhood, maybe in the innocence and some of the joy, and then the impending terror. Maybe of growing up. I know they cast, again, Frodo as a very young character. He was I think he was 50 years old in the book. That's a little up there, present company included, but it's a little up there. Just beginning the journey. And Tolkien, again, I just love the fact that he paced it the way he did. But when Howard Shore put this music to it, I tell you what, he was conjuring Tolkien somehow, when in the coolness of, you almost feel in the music, the coolness of the breeze blowing through the trees when you enter Rivendell. I'm just serious. It's so beautiful. And the ominous, the visual with, that's what a great a composer would do for you. They'll help you to feel and see not only what you're seeing, even though you're right, there are beautiful visuals there, and what you're hearing is so evocative and wonderful. I'll use your word, but yeah, it's the music that just draws me in, and I leave humming it. I bought, I think you know this, I purchased all the soundtracks for them and listened to them incessantly. And I found it, even as I was here's the nerdy thing that I did. I went back and I read the novels again after seeing it, listening to the soundtrack. And imagining, and I would have to listen to a certain, did you do this again, Luke? I think you did this too. But I would just imagine myself being in the theater, seeing these visuals, being surrounded and totally focused. I think that's the great thing about cinema, as opposed to, I mean, I'm a book person, you know that. But that being in the cinema, there's a keen focus, and the vision of the director in concert with the composer and the costumer and the lighting specialist, all of those people, and the Weta and all the effects, they work together in such a beautiful way that the story gets, you're isolated in the story. There's not the phone ringing next to you or the cat jumping on you, right? If you're reading a book, or someone, blowing the horn to move up in Starbucks as you're reading a book, which I've done before, things like that. No, but you're isolated into a story. And I think that's great. And again, Howard Shore's score, I can say that. I think it won awards. I think that the score won an Academy Award or so, and maybe even the song from it, was it Into the West or Let It Be? I forget. Or there's several of them. Anyway, but the music this is the number one thing for me that drew me into the narrative that I'd known.
That's really important. Jesse, what was your favorite? What did you like about this film?
I would probably say that the cast and crew, not just the regular actors and actresses themselves, but like the cohesiveness behind like how all of them work together and how they don't work together when they're not supposed to. But there's still this level of like this hand-picked cast, that like this works perfect for this person and this works perfect for that person, and then bringing them all together to create this fellowship, right? That, and then just all of the other background players that really aren't in the fellowship but add so much to the movie. I mean, you just take this like old guide, type person that's like, okay, this is where I need you guys to go. This is what you guys need to do. Almost like the teacher in the room, like, and you kind of see that when they actually do all meet up in Rivendell. They get all mad, and they're arguing, but then all of a sudden they get back on track, and then Elrond gets them to where they need to go. And so just all of the different pieces, and then you kind of see the start of Aragorn and Arwen's love story, not really the start, but I guess more like in the middle. And you start to see a little bit of touches of that throughout the Fellowship, and you can see that there's a history there, but you don't really know if you didn't read the books. You don't really know that that's as big of a deal as what it is until we start to see down the road to the other movies. But I would have to say that my favorite part, I guess, is actually a quote, which is, it's crazy, right? Because you have all this beautiful stuff happening in this movie. But it's actually Gandalf's quote. And so it says, all we have to decide is what to do with the time given us. And I think that quote is like, what in the world is Lord of the Rings without that quote? It's like that is, it's not just, and you can apply it to every day. It's like, yeah, it's just mind blowing. So, for me, I'm going to stop because I could go on for hours and hours and hours.
It's okay. That's what this is for.
It is very hard for me just to pick one thing or a group of things that I like about it, because it's just, and it's great that there's a lot of different stories throughout these movies that are happening simultaneously, but like they are progressing, and each group is progressing, and when they get split up and they come back, and then they're all together, but then they split up again, and then this group goes over here and that one does this, and it's like everything is just like a command, or they're sort of dividing and conquering as they're going through, and it's just the whole story. It's just absolutely breathtaking, really.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great tribute to wonderful work done on this film. Everyone's kind of taken mine, so I'm gonna try.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. That's why I went last. I have to admit, for me, it has to be the makeup, the design. New Zealand. Look, this was the early 2000s. We've seen some CGI from the early 2000s and the Scorpion King and some other things. That's yikes. They could have done that. They really could have, but they didn't. And the time that they spent to really make this an immersive world, like you had brought up, that it is. This is one of those few things that I can just watch and not be distracted by anything and just be fully immersed in, which is probably why it's up there in some of my favorite films. It's a huge fantasy world. It's inspired RPGs, it's inspired games, other books. It's inspired so much. I actually turned on Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War today, and started playing around just because I was like, I love this world, and something about just jumping in and having a sword and that's it, and having a good heart, and you just go. And I love the storytelling so much. Maybe not well, I'll get to that. The storytelling is fantastic. The way that they chose to provide this story, Peter Jackson and that crew were fantastic at Weta. One of the things that I really enjoyed also, I'm going to try to be brief, was their use of Massive. Now, Massive was what they used to generate the facial expressions and everything in like gigantic crowds of orcs and all kinds of stuff. And one of the things they could do is they could click, and Peter Jackson would do this just to show you the depth they went to. He would click on an orc that's like miles and miles in our perception back there, and you could see the twisted faces and the anger or shock, surprise, like just the everything, every detail that they went to make sure you are immersed in Tolkien's world and that you feel like you are with Tolkien. It really, there's parts of this film where it feels like Tolkien is just reading to us. And this is not one of those movies where I could play it in the car on a long trip and just picture it in my head. No, they did so well with the designs. I have to watch it with it. Like, that's just how integral it is to this film series. And I guess as I'm talking, I realize I'm kind of glad that this won, because I'm okay with talking about this. So let's do the hard part now. We did what we like. What didn't you like about this film? If it's just one thing, that's fine. Just be picky. I think the only person that doesn't have to do that, because I am omnipotent with the scores here, I think is Jesse. So I'm not going to ask Jesse to do that. But anyone that doesn't have that score, I'd like to hear just one thing that you didn't like that made you maybe think that way about the film.
I mean, with me, it's not even something that I have with the film. It's that, it's different than what I grew up with when I was, 9, 10, 11 years old, when my mom read me the books for the first time. Things like, Frodo not being an older man when he goes on his journey. Characters not being fully fleshed out or sometimes completely eliminated, sometimes for no discernible reason, like Glorfindel. If those who have read the books remember his name, he's the one who actually got Frodo to Rivendell with the Nazgul right behind him. So it's those things that I look at and I go, I wish they could have put in Glorfindel, or I wish they could have made Frodo a little older. But it's hard for me because that's just something, that's one of the biases that I bring to the movies as someone who is a big, huge fan of the books. But I would not be having those criticisms of it if I were just coming into it having not read the books, as many people have done. I know that's basically what I did with the Harry Potter movies. I hadn't read the books, and so I just went into the Harry Potter movies just kind of with, as a clean slate. But yeah, no, just those things as mainly a fan of the books, those are the things that, it's hard for me to ignore sometimes.
That makes sense. What about you, Deb?
It's similar. I felt I guess it's just our modern cinematography expectations, right? When we go to a movie, we don't expect to sit there for 3 hours, I guess, until the third one in this series. Like, goodness gracious. I don't think there'd ever been a movie that was it Return of the King 3 hours or whatever it was. Yeah. Plus they had an intermission when we saw it. It was like, because people just could not. Oh goodness. I think my only criticism is the fact that I know we said it showed us worlds, but I felt like we just moved into the world and we just rushed into it. Whereas, and this is part of Tolkien's process, is to help you to see what's in the world, experience what's in the world, and it doesn't feel like it's in a rush. That's the one thing that strikes me about any novel, any movie creation of a novel. It sometimes seems like you have to move the story along so fast that it just feels like, if, for example, the metaphor I used earlier about, meeting up with an old friend, he's like, okay, we got 5 minutes. We haven't seen each other in 15 years. Go. It feels like that in some ways, that we're kind of rushing along the narrative when we need to know a little bit more about Frodo and his background and, what he's gone through with Bilbo, even at the beginning, just for example. We're just rushed into the narrative and here we are, and he's having a birthday. Great. And he's gone. Like, well, I guess that's that. Oh, all right, bye. It's kind of like villains in the Star Wars universe. Like, bye, you're gone. Bye. Whereas they've had usually in the universe itself much more substantive role. So that's my only criticism. It's not a major one. It's a minor one. I guess the extended version plays it out a little bit better. So you're able to dwell a little bit more. So I would say my rating would go for the original theatric version because the extended didn't come out originally. That was a later iteration on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever. So yeah, that's my only thing I give points a little bit points off for as far as top movie.
And that makes sense. Both of your reasonings make a lot of sense. Jesse, just out of curiosity, do you have anything? If you don't, that's okay. We'll talk about it in a minute. But here's where everyone's gonna roast me. Fellowship is probably my lowest rated of the three.
Oh no!
The exposition dump is kind of a lot.
You're turning into Tom Bombadil now. Anyway, never mind.
Well, that'll come back later.
Who is he talking about? I don't know.
I do love this movie, and I think the storytelling and the cinematography, the music, I think everything we're talking about really gets me in it. But when you boil down the story, like that's where I get lost with Fellowship. It's like a in real time or in the book time, it's like a several year-long camping trip with middle-aged men going to drop off jewelry. Like, without some of the fantasy elements in there, I might kind of get lost. Now it gets better. For me, if you guys have seen that meme of like the drawing of a horse.
You haven't been with middle-aged men running errands lately, Dan. This does take all day. You know that, right? Tolkien was not wrong. When he made that assertion, it was like, I don't know where we're going. I guess we take this way. No, we'll go right. No, we'll go straight.
Well,
we'll ask this strange guy named Tom. Okay, why not?
Yeah,
exactly middle-aged men.
Tolkien's universe. Take a left to Mordor. Anyways,
sorry.
But yeah, I just that's my only complaint. Which I guess if you boil down Star Wars, boy blows up dad's workplace after feud. So I could do this with everything. But this reminds me, I don't know if you've seen the meme where people sketch out a horse, and as the horse goes on, it just gets like more ugly and looks like a toddler drew it. It's the other way around for me. The back end of this horse is like falling apart, and then you go on, and it's like beautifully sketched out, and it's wonderful as you keep going. So that's how I feel about these films. This one's just hard because really the first half of it is just, there's a ring. What are we going to do with the ring? I don't know. Let's have a council. Oh, wait, the hobbit showed up to the council. Let's break it. We haven't tried to break it with an axe. Let's see if that works. Oh, wait, it needs to go into the mystical fires of Mount Doom. You know what I mean? I'm like, holy crap. Like, you could have crammed that down just a little bit and get us to Moria faster.
Well, I think just to jump off of that, I guess, I think it's the idea of the instant gratification of like, we're used to movies being 2 hours. Within that 2 hours, I am going to meet the cast and crew. I'm going to figure out the plot. There's going to be an ending, and I'm going to sum everything up in 2 hours. Whereas this movie, you have to like almost massage it. It's like some bread dough, It's like you really have to get into it, and you have to enjoy the journey. You have to sit in here hoping that it doesn't end. And I think the more that I watch it, I'm probably one of those people that's watched it like 300 times.
I know you are that person that's probably watched it 300 times. I don't have to guess.
There's some days where it's in the background and I just press start over after it ends, and it just keeps starting over and over and over. But it's like the more I watch it, the more it's like I know when things are going to happen, and it's like upsetting. It's like, oh no, like we are now 2/3 of the way through this movie, and like we're going to get to the end of it, and then I'm going to have to start at the Two Towers. Like, or I'm going to have to just replay it, which is what I do. I mean, it's not like I don't like the Two Towers or Return of the King, but this movie here, it's like you almost have to watch it like you're watching it for the first time every time, and you're getting fully immersed, like we've been talking about, into not just when is there going to be swords clanking and bows firing and magic, happening. It's more or less like I want to get to know all of the cultures and the races and the characters and the people, and listen to the music and watch the lighting and see everything happen in the background. And I think that's why Fellowship for me is number one out of all three of them. Is it sets the base for everything up. It's a great movie to set for a trilogy. I mean,
it is. It's very strong. I will admit, this past time, like you said, like a first time viewing, I tried to view it that way, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more that way. Instead of, I've seen this like 10 billion times, I know what's going to happen. I've been trying to do that with every movie that we do. I've been trying to like, okay, I have biases, I have thoughts. I just want to enjoy it for the film that it is. And when you do that, you're right. You get so much more enjoyment out of this, because it is, it's like an apple pie. The first slice is just as good as the last slice. Like, it doesn't matter. You're going to enjoy the entire pie the entire time. I'm just picky about how the crumbs and the cracker crust was on the last piece of pie. That's my problem.
Every time.
Like,
every time.
Can I just
Since
say,
he was young, this is nothing new.
Metaphors.
Brad's been talking about food since we were 8.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's fair. But I will say, one of the things always linked me with this, the behind the scenes, the filming, the stories is incredible for all three of these films. It makes me love these films even more because I wanted to be an actor when I was younger. I really immersed myself, and Lord of the Rings is perfect. You would rather play it again and again and again. I'd rather watch it and then turn on all the behind the scenes stuff. Show me all the filming. Show me the green screen.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about why you made this decision. I love that. I love hearing some stuff I'm going to talk about in trivia about stuff that happened to actors. And then they would just come back in and like how many other films do you hear that about, that they are willing to put the story and all of this stuff and give it the right attention?
Willing to put their bodies on the line in some cases.
But just the love that went into this film oozes out of it. And the way that the cast was with each other. I think, Jesse, you mentioned this earlier, that the casting together was so much better than what it would have been separately. And I think you nailed that with this is the best time we see that casting together. Yes, it is broken up later. And I kind of like that because I like with acting, one of the acting styles that we talked about was just being truthful with the people that are around you and building relationships through truth and love. And you see that with Frodo and Sam in the future. You see that with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. You get to see some patchwork on the dwarf and elven relations. Like, you get to see more of a smaller scope of that relationship. But in terms of a larger scope and fellowship, you get that absolutely. And you get to see all of them together build that fellowship. So I agree. I do like it. It was different this time. I will admit it was different this time, trying to do the first time filming and just throwing everything out and like, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm just going to take this for what it is. I will admit it ends really stupidly, though. Like, let's stare at Mordor. Like, you could have given us something better. Like, like a cliffhanger, like, oh, you hear Gollum's raspy voice behind them, or you hear his breathing or something, like anything. It was just, let's stare at the scenery. Cut. Okay. Anyways, it's not like it's bad scenery to look at. New Zealand is beautiful.
I have to say one other thing that I really enjoyed. One person who never showed up on camera who helped to shape this is Andy Serkis. I just have to say, shout out to him. His brilliance in his what he did, all these filmings of him acting this out, and they actually transferred it to this digital character, but his voice and his acting. So he was just as much a part of this movie, even though you didn't see his face, but you saw it in Gollum. I just have to get a shout out to Andy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant acting.
Okay, I have some trivia. I am more than happy to go last because I have a lot. Because there's so many behind the scenes, so many wacky stories, so many funny little bits of knowledge. Wow, like my tongue felt stuck to the roof of my mouth for a minute. I'm gonna have a drink and give me 1 second. Luke, do you have any trivia for this film? Anything you know that happened behind the scenes that you just really enjoy?
Oh, I feel like so much of it happens in the what do you call it? In the other movies. There's so many more famous trivia that happens in the Two Towers and Return of the King. But the one thing that I was able to look up is that the cast was always thought it really, really fun whenever Liv Tyler was on set. If you missed that, Brad, it's like, just the cast was very, very honored and really, whenever Liv Tyler was on set, tried to make her as comfortable as possible. And I thought that was really wholesome. Really start treating her like a princess and just be like, hey, you are, really, it's like between her and Cate Blanchett, there aren't a lot of women in this film. It's a lot of, guys, again, going to drop off some jewelry. Yeah. So whenever you have like Cate Blanchett or Liv Tyler on set, it's like, hey, let's make sure that, we treat them right. And just, the appreciativeness that they've showed in interviews of that, I thought was very, very wholesome.
I like that. Speaking of other princesses on casts of non-Lord of the Rings things, Peter Cushing is probably the first person I'll think of because he had to wear, slippers on set every day when they filmed. That's why you never see Tarkin from the waist down.
Yeah, Star Wars.
Sorry, speaking of the princess treatment, I was thinking of the guy that would only wear slippers for the entire.
He wore them, but bothered his feet, so he had to wear. Yeah, exactly. So you see this stern talking, but he's got little slippers down below.
Yeah. So he said princess treatment, and that was the first thing I could think of.
Gosh,
Uh,
of course you would.
yes. Dad, do you have any trivia, anything that you learned like through watching the behind the scenes stuff like that, stories you've heard?
Mine's a Tolkien story. I got one Tolkien story and I got one more. It said, and Jesse, maybe you can confirm this too, but Tolkien wasn't a very good typist. He actually typed the entire trilogy with 2 fingers. That's what I heard. There's my trivia thrown in there. It's just, I mean, thousands of pages. Click, click, click,
Oh my
click.
gosh.
You can confirm that. That's one of the things I saw. It just fascinated me.
That is a labor of love.
He
built
had to
this
have had a
whole
good
world.
memory.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
that's one of the big ones. And I just forgotten this. Oh, we know this. This is an easy one, but is it Billy and Sarah? Was that Peter Jackson's kids? They're actually in this movie too. Which is
Yes.
always
Yeah.
a nice thing when you can add your children in there. But that's
They're
just like-
they're are they Samwise's kids in 3? I
think
can't
it might
remember.
be.
I know there's somebody's
I don't
like
know.
children in this movie, and I can't think of who it is.
Sam's daughter is actually Sam's daughter, I think.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of. There you
okay. Yeah.
I believe so.
go. Okay.
Yeah.
Jesse, trivia, behind the scenes stuff, anything fun?
I don't know. I wasn't thinking about trivia questions. Why don't you go, and then I'll try to think of something.
Yeah, that's fine. I have a few. The first one that's not written in my notes that I will always remember. Also, my wife, what I was saying to my wife, the reason she probably hates me watching Lord of the Rings, every time we get around to the 2 towers and they go to the burnt pile that's there and they're looking for the hobbits, every time. Did you know Viggo Mortensen broke his toe on that one scene where he kicked That's what she texted me, and I'm like, it's
That's
in
the one I
one.
was talking about.
Oh yeah,
When I said future movie.
He did all his
Yeah.
stunts, is what I heard. Most of his stunts.
He did. I have stuff on him. Speaking of him doing his own stunts, do I have that written in here? We're gonna find out. If not, I'm gonna tell you anyways. He refused to use
yes.
like a rubber sword or anything else. He used
Steel.
a real steel sword the entire
did.
time,
He did.
which is incredible.
Mhm.
One of the ones I'm thinking of when he fights Lurtz after Boromir has been shot and he's fighting, the stuntman messed up and they kept it. He throws the knife back at Aragorn. He was supposed to miss, but if you go back and you look, it's coming directly at his face. Vigo's reflexes just came in. He goes, and deflects it. That was not scripted. That was him saving his face. But it's such a cool scene to
It's
see
so
it thrown
awesome.
back. And
It
he
is
just goes,
awesome.
that was not scripted. That's all Vigo. I love Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he sells Lord of the Rings for me.
One piece of Lord of the Rings trivia that I also just remembered.
Yes.
Christopher Lee, who plays Saruman, he was
Yes.
actually a huge Lord of the Rings Tolkien nerd.
He was.
And he could actually recite the ring poem
Oh.
in the Black speech from memory.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
That
Which
was
is,
my first
which boggles
bit of-
my mind because I can't even find it on the internet, the whole thing in Black speech. So for him to know it
Illegal.
all, because that's not just the one verse. It's like, the Ashnas Turbataluk. We're talking, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie, 3 for the elven king, 3 of the elven rings under the sun, 7 for the dwarf lords. And so all of that he knew in Black speech, which boggles my mind.
He also wanted to play the role of Gandalf, I understood.
Yeah.
But he was too old for Gandalf.
Mm.
So he was very happy to be part of it. But I thought he was brilliant.
Oh, he
Yeah.
was amazing as
He
Saruman.
met Tolkien too, I believe.
That was my
Oh,
first
yeah.
piece of trivia. He was the only
at a
member
bar?
of the
Is that what I
cast and crew
read?
that had ever met Tolkien. The only
Bumped
one.
into him at a bar. Yeah.
And actually, he read The Lord of the Rings once a year until his death in 2015. I
read
was
that
like,
too.
that's really
Yeah.
neat.
That's really
My second one is funny. You guys are gonna like this. Gandalf in the beginning when he is in Bilbo's Hobbit hole, His painful encounter with that ceiling beam, which we can all remember and hear in our head. Oh, not scripted. It was just Ian McKellen. He actually banged his forehead against the beam, and he stayed in character. And Jackson thought he did a great job acting through it, so they threw it in there. So that was never supposed to be a part, and I just love that it's there. Here's the difference between two very distinct and great actors in here. Viggo Mortensen refused to fly up, not because he hated flying. He just wanted to be in character and have it the whole time. So he would take a horse with him, and he would go out 1 or 2 days before they were supposed to film on a bit of set. He would camp, and not like glamping. No, he would camp like a ranger would camp, like feed himself, whatever. And then he would be there and be waiting for everybody. However, the other funny part of that was Sean Bean did that as well, but he was terrified of flying unless it was absolutely necessary. So when they were shooting scenes in the Misty Mountains up in the snowy parts of the mountain, he'd spend 2 hours every morning climbing from the base of the mountain to the set at the top, dressed as Boromir. So a lot of crew and cast have stories about watching him climb as they flew up there, which I thought was really funny. During filming, most of the members of the Fellowship of the Ring took up surfing in New Zealand, which is fine, except that Viggo Mortensen wiped out really bad the one day and bruised the entire side of his face. Makeup artists tried to mask the bruising and swelling that he had, but they weren't successful. So Peter Jackson, instead of losing a couple weeks of filming, he opted to film Viggo from one side of his face during the entire Moria scene. So when you're in the mines of Moria and you find the tomb, Aragorn is only seen from one side of his face.
I gotta go back and watch that. Okay.
That is nuts.
I was watching it last night. His hair covers some too. And then sometimes you'll just see him in his profile. We knew this. The Elvish language lines spoken in this movie are not just quotes from the book. They were derived from Tolkien's own limited dictionary of that language. They had a dialect coach that used recordings of Tolkien reading his books to actually teach the actors and actresses how to pronounce things. And I thought that was really cool that Tolkien lived on again in another way.
I wonder how that happened. That's a good bit of trivia.
Here's a good funny one for you. Billy Boyd and Viggo Mortensen could often be found wrestling and roughhousing off set, which is why they have a funny little interaction all the time in there. Second Breakfast was not originally, it was written, but they weren't supposed to do anything. Viggo then decided it would be funny if, apples are just thrown in. So it was Viggo's suggestion to chuck the apple at his head. Now, the only terrible thing about that is when you're throwing a piece of fruit, you're not going to be accurate every time. So they had to shoot the scene 16 times. So Billy Boyd got beamed a couple times in the head by Viggo, and Billy could just hear Viggo laughing offset whenever he got hit in the head. So I just thought that was really funny. Another cast little interaction, something that made it into the film that's super funny. My love for Viggo Mortensen will never decrease. If you don't know, he's trilingual in English, Spanish, and Danish. But he requested the script to be revised because he said Aragorn would never have lived among the elves without really learning how to speak Elvish fluently. So the reason he speaks so much, he refused to read the lines in English. He was like, rewrite it in Elvish and I'll learn it. I was like, that's that.
I love that.
Summer on Viggo. I'm sorry. Viggo is probably the most exciting off-screen person in this whole thing. He joined the movie when it was already...
because
go ahead.
Just real quick. You're talking about Viggo so much, but I was actually kind of doing a little bit of research right here. Did you know that Viggo was not the first choice?
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, that one too.
Then you go ahead. I won't steal your thunder.
He was not originally chosen. I don't remember who it was. I didn't have that written. Do you know who it is?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
He was the second one. There's one before him. Oh,
really?
Who was that? Yes. Shoot. wasn't Nicolas Cage. Who was it?
Oh my gosh.
It was
I'm
someone
gonna
else,
steal the
but
Declaration of
it was
Independence.
someone, and then it was Daniel Day, and then Vigo. But
Vigo.
I think it was brilliant.
The crazy thing about it,
Stuart Townsend.
Stuart Townsend. Vigo joined the movie when they were already shooting, so he didn't really audition much. Peter Jackson actually had never met Viggo Mortensen. Mortensen declined originally until his 11-year-old son Henry convinced him to sign on as Aragorn because he loved the books. And it was actually Henry that gave his dad advice and said, "Oh, Aragorn would never do that." And I thought that was so funny that the 11-year-old kid reading the book that's like, "Well, Aragorn wouldn't actually say that like that, Dad." Just super funny.
It's like the 11-year-old playing D&D. It's like, well, that's not what my character would do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's one of the only ones that would do his own effects and stunts. Veteran swordmaster Bob Anderson actually said he was the best swordsman he had ever trained. And I am trying to remember this. It's not written, but I believe he also said that he had photographic memory. So they could show him a couple things and he would just have it memorized the next time he was on set and go through the whole thing. And we know some other stories, but that didn't happen in one. I'll talk about those later. Christopher Lee, we talked about that. He's the only person that's ever met J.R.R. Tolkien. Because of his extensive knowledge of the books and because he kind of knew Tolkien, he would visit the makeup department and give them tips about the facial design of the monsters, how certain costumes would probably come across for elves. And I'm like, oh, I love that. So really it's Tolkien and Christopher Lee, fanboy, that gave us some of our designs that we have. Oh, that's not this one. That's in the second one. So I'll bring that up later. This one I never knew. This one was new for me. Liv Tyler, when she was filming the "If You Want Him, Come and Claim Him," she accidentally stabbed herself in her right thigh. The footage is in the bloopers and outtakes of the movie, but you can see where she like puts it down and stabs herself. I'm like, that's awful. I hate that. There were a lot of weird accidents. Sean Astin was another one. And the boat scene where Frodo's going across and he's like, "Goodbye, Sam. I'm going by myself." "Of course you are, and I'm coming with you." When they were out and they were filming in that lake, he had 3-inch piece of glass that actually got into his foot. Yeah,
I read that.
Yeah.
One other thing too, John Rhys Davis was actually the tallest actor. You're going to get to that too, right?
He was 6'1".
He's the tallest one, and I love the perspectives. Again, when I was saying that earlier, it's like, dude, I remember seeing him in Indiana Jones and other movies and thinking,
he's
a tall
he's
guy.
a big guy.
Now he's dwarf. Okay, brilliant.
He's
He's the best actor for it.
And then I'm out of trivia unless somebody else has something.
I've got one thing I'm saving to the end. One thing.
Okay. When the dragon firework goes off at Bilbo's party, the screaming that you hear, it's actually Billy Boyd real screaming because he didn't know that the firework was actually going to go off on set. He thought it was going to be in a separate shot. So it wasn't scripted, but you can hear him scream in the final cut when the firework goes off. And I thought that was fitting. That is all the trivia I have, at least for this movie. I have so much more for the next two that I'll save. Go for it. You have one.
Okay, I've got just one thing. It is so odd. You're going to, as soon as this is over, and those who are watching will want to go and click on this, go to Apple Music, go to YouTube, and type in this. There was a famous science fiction actor who actually sang a ballad of Bilbo Baggins. That would be Leonard Nimoy, the gentleman who played depicted Spock. He sang a song. This is the first thing that came to mind when you said, I thought, oh gosh, why is that song stuck in my head? So go and look up Leonard Nimoy, the ballad of Bilbo Baggins, and you will never be the same.
Spock singing about Bilbo. I don't think I'll ever get that out of my brain.
Oh no! When you watch it, go watch it. Yeah, It's worth it, and you'll stand there and almost be as mesmerized as with the movie itself.
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
True
great.
story.
I love that.
True story.
Ugh.
It came out in the 70s when he recorded, I think 73, 74, when he was in his singing career. Yeah, go to Apple Music. It's the album is called Spaced Out, the very best of Leonard Nimoy.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, but it's the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. It is worth a listen.
I'll have to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of the 70s, I've also said that should there be enough interest, I would love to review the cartoon versions of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all those. Yeah,
Yes.
the campy.
Oh
Yeah, I
Bacon
remember
and
some of
bass
those,
versions. Yes.
I think it's the Return of the King one where the orcs are singing "When There's a Wind, There's a Way," and sometimes it just pops into my head, and I'm like, "Just go away! Like I don't want this right now." But it's just campy, and I love those. And the voice acting is ridiculous, and it's very 70s. I would do those sometime. That brings us to our ratings. This has been such a fun episode so far, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to ruin it with our ratings. I'm gonna start with Kyle because Kyle couldn't be with us, and I told him I would share his score anyways. Kyle gave it a 9.1. Kyle likes this film. Oh, I just got rid of everybody there. Give me 1 second, and I'll rectify that. But he said it's just so stunning, such a great film, so much going on. Probably one of his more favorite movies, which would give it this evening. I changed the name for some of the awards. That would give it the Sting Award. It is a good film. I will be last because I've been doing that with everyone else. Luke, what would your rating for this film be? And I will tell you what your award is.
Okay, I'm giving it an 8.5. However, that's due purely to my biases coming in it as such a book nerd and as such a book purist. That's my downfall. That's my Achilles heel. If not for that, this could easily be a 9.5 movie. But I got to give it a few points off for some of the, what I would say, more. Yes, how appropriate. How appropriate.
I knew what your ratings were, and I thought it would be appropriate to have a book character for your ratings. So I'm going to give you the Tom Bombadil Award this evening.
I will take it. I will take it. I'll need to break out my yellow boots.
I'm a big fan of that. Dad, you are actually next. Your rating, please.
I'm trying to remember what I told you.
I'll put it up there.
8.7. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies. Again, I like it better than the other two in the trilogy. I'm with you, Jesse, definitely in this movie. If I were to rate the soundtrack, it would be a solid 9.8. I'm saying it's on up there with my favorite soundtracks of all time, right up there with John Williams, some of his scores, especially in the Star Wars suite. So I'm saying it's just amazing. I would score the Tom Bombadil. You'd give me something higher than that. Come on.
Well,
or the leaves of Lorien or something. Come on, man.
I gave it from the 8 to 9, so you both happen to have the Tom Bombadil Award for the evening. Jesse, I think you're going to have a very interesting score, and I'd like to hear it. Jesse, you're up next.
So I give it a 10. It's it's the only movie that I know. Like I watched it the first time when I was like 6. And then watching it at 27 and have watched it so many times, it never wears on you. It still puts you in that same excited feeling that when I was 6 years old watching it, being almost 30. And it's like, I'm still just as excited to watch it the second time in the same day. I can't really find anything in it that I can sit there and, say that they could have done better here, or this should have been different, or this should have been, and a lot of movies you can, but with this one, it's just like everything. I think somebody used the word pure before. It's it has that pure kind of feeling to it that it's like all these actors and this movie is like happening. And it's kind of like a bunch of people just getting together to do something, you know. It's just it's crazy. It's crazy, like science fiction fantasy world. It's like, I think Luke mentioned earlier, it's like we can see aspects of this fantasy world in our own lives every single day. And it's like, it's so far from our own lives in 2022. So I just don't know any other movie. I mean, if this isn't a 10 for me, I don't know what other movie would ever be able to hit a 10. So this, I will never have a 10 again, but this was my only one.
My precious.
That would award you with the My Precious Award for the evening. And also a celebration. This is the highest rated film we have had on this podcast so far with a 10. No one has ever dished out a 10. Jesse, you now have the distinct honor of giving out our first 10 on this podcast.
I'll take a check.
Although, for as much as I complain, and for as much as Luke and Dad have really pined for this movie, I actually had a higher rating for this film than it sounds like I do when I talk about it. I gave it a 9.3. It really is. I agree with Jesse. It's just pure, and it's not a story that you feel bogged by. There's not any parts where I'm like, holy crap, hurry up, like I'm going to fall asleep. Like, it doesn't happen that way. It's just so put together. I just really enjoyed it. I was really tempted to catalog and rate all the foods from this film as a part of my review, but I ended up not doing that. The tomatoes and nice crispy bacon would have really been high up there for me. But, you know, with a little ash on top, no other way to have them. So that would give the Sting Award for me this evening for this film. All in all, it's hard not to rate these movies very high, because name at least 5 other franchises that have surpassed 20 years of absolute adoration from fans. It's very rare. There's probably 2 other movie franchises that I can think of that would fall in that category. And we're going to review them. So don't worry. We'll tell you what they are. But it's just hard. And the other thing is, in 2001, we had this stunning film that I'm watching 21 years later, and it looks like it could have came out last year. Like, they really did not lack in giving it a timeless appeal. And Star Wars, you know, it's older. There's some things that you watch it and you're like, oh, it's kind of outdated, but it's sci-fi, but you still are there. But just this fantasy world to be limited by the technology and the things they could do to make something that was just well beyond the time that they made it, and make it as convincing as they did, is incredible. And I will watch any opportunity, truthfully.
I'm really blown away. One other thing, I'm really blown away by Tolkien's vision of all these worlds. And I think we mentioned this, but just one more thing. I mean, who takes the time to develop languages that he envisions his characters speaking? I mean, his vision, I mean, when he wrote this, what was it, 54, something when it was published. I mean, The Hobbit was before then, 37, but who has this kind of vision? And the fact that they could, 70 some years, 69 some years later, whatever, from The Hobbit on, someone finally captures something that still captures our imagination on film from this. But what a visionary Tolkien was. What a visionary.
Yes, sir.
Well, does anyone have any closing comments? I don't want to deprive anyone from speaking about this film. All right. Well, if that's it, thanks guys for hanging around on a Friday with us for us to talk Tolkien with you. Join us as we will record next on June the 3rd with the Two Towers. Hopefully we'll see you all there. Hopefully you love this. Like, subscribe, share, and we will see you next week.